think I'm going live. All right, so
Okay.
now I think it's live on YouTube. And then when the recording is done, I will take it. I'll go to the radio station tonight because I got to go there, and I'll repost it to like a SoundCloud or something like that, where someone else they can listen to it when we're done, because I can obviously edit out this stuff that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think how I'll go into the show too is I'm just going to count down from 5 and just do a cold intro. So I'm literally just going to start it, just kind of bam.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know a cold intro.
Yeah. Okay. I figured. So yeah. So I think I'll do it that way when we're ready to go.
And now, do you just do you want to take the lead and just be like, here we are? Like, I'm assuming you probably thought about this a little bit, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
it's going to be a little different just because we've never done it before, and
Yeah, I figured this will be the training wheel session.
exactly.
However this works out, whether it sounds good or bad, we'll know, and you obviously have a pretty good ear for it afterwards. Where once you listen to it when you're done, I'm sure it probably helps you get a feel for probably what was wrong or what was right with it.
Right.
And then we can go from there. So yeah, man, whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
All right, dude. Sounds good. I'm just gonna do this quick. Beep, 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 boop. I told just a few people about it, so I want to see if some can listen to it if they want. Live. Okay, so I'll count down from 5. And yeah, by the way, and we're talking the normal topic stuff like Druin and Kemper and power play and just, and if there's something that comes up, obviously you're welcome.
Yeah, run with it. Okay, cool. Yeah, I've got talking points for all that, so sounds great.
All right, man. So I'm gonna count down from 5 and go from there. Okay.
Yep.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And welcome all to the, I think we're dubbing this the Lost in the Wild podcast. I'm Declan Goff. There's Liam Goff as well, my brother who's in North Carolina. Liam, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
So that's my brother Liam. He is one of the few guys that picks on everything sports related, I say, not just from my friends, but he takes it to a new level. So we thought, why not combine both of us? And obviously being little brother, I'm always mostly just yelling back at my brothers, and that can be very entertaining for people that like either our family and or sports, if not a combination of both. So this show will kind of most likely be, we think it'll be a Minnesota Wild based podcast. It doesn't mean we won't, I guess, talk other sports topics.
We could always dabble. We could dabble.
We could dibble. We could dibble.
Dibble and dabble.
Yeah. So this episode obviously is about, we're going to start with the Minnesota Wild, our most beloved team. And right now in the state of Minnesota, even though they're in a slump, the most stable team right now and for the long term, and probably the most likely one to get a championship out of the 4 major sports. But Minnesota Wild talk, obviously, we'll start off the program with that, and hope you enjoy the podcast. So Lee, you and I, we're talking about, and everyone's been talking about, if the Wild are going to make a trade at this deadline. I mean, Fletcher's been active every last few years. The Wild have been in it. Obviously, the Druin talk is kind of leading the way. But, I mean, just a gut reaction from that to me is just clearly, with the kid now not reporting to Syracuse and AHL, not even showing up for games, I just really want kind of no business of that. And it's really is. I know he's young and he's a 3rd overall pick. They don't just pluck 3rd overall picks off everywhere. I know he's obviously got talent, but I think it's a lot to risk if you're going to trade like a valuable asset like the Wild are offering, like a Matt Dumma or a Jonas Brodin.
Yeah. It's interesting because people, kind of have been clamoring for a move to be made. I do think that the answer is inside the Wild locker room. Picking up a guy like Druin, let's not even think about Druin, specifically as much of who Druin is. Druin's probably more of a playmaking winger more than a scoring winger that everyone thought he was. He did play a little bit of center in juniors. However, he was mainly on the wing for with Nathan McKinnon's line in that draft year. Now, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to bring in another playmaking winger when we're kind of stockpiled with those. Pominville is kind of obviously a more established version of Druin right now. He's in a career low year, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to pick up a guy who hasn't proven anything so far in his career on what really is a much more potent offense than the Wilds. And if he's having a hard time producing at that level there, I know injuries have set him back, but he was given the opportunity to start in a line with Steven Stamkos, and he wasn't able to really bring points to the level that Tampa Bay wanted him to. That's kind of a big reason why he was sent down to Syracuse. They thought that he could, one, get conditioning for time missed through his injuries, and also prove that he was 100% healthy. So I just don't think that trade makes a lot of sense. And even if you do, a Matt Dumba isn't. You talk about a number 3 overall pick not growing on trees. Well, right-handed offensive defensemen don't grow on trees either.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's the thing with Druin too. I think the most thing that stood out when his name was offered up, it was, well, okay, he played in Tampa Bay. Clearly, there's not a lack of talent in Tampa Bay, nor, even though there's a lot of players playing it, a lot of people could say, well, how is he supposed to make plays when a lot of these guys are scoring goals, like a Steven Stamkos, like a Flupla, or anyone on their team. They have a lot of guys that score goals. I mean, if you can't produce with guys like that, then clearly I don't think it's the supporting cast's fault to make a guy like Druin. And a wing, the Wild, other than defensemen, they have more than enough capable of wings that are NHL ready,
right?
Playing at a high level right now.
It's wings not playing up to their level, which is the Wild's problem. Now, I'm not one of these guys, so don't lump me in here. But I kind of start to wonder is Yeo I'm not going to call him the problem, but is he not the solution? I kind of wonder, is after 5 years, has the same voice in the locker room kind of gone by the wayside now?
That's a really good point, man. And people have hounded on Yeo or called for Yeo's head, obviously a few times already in his short tenure.
Just about every year.
Honestly.
Usually between November and December 31st.
Yeah, right now we're usually at that time of year. We're kind of getting past that, but we're still kind of there. As someone that was very critical of Mike Yeo just last year or even 2 years ago, and I was pretty adamant on it. I didn't really understand the constant line changing, and it was more than that. It was just, is this the guy that you could win a Stanley Cup with? And it's tough to make this assumption that he's necessarily a problem, because he has these great supporting this great team he has, and some of these players, they want him to perform better, but we're stuck with this team, and I don't think it's Yeo that's not really getting these players to produce. I don't think that's a Mike Yeo problem necessarily. I think it stems from them clearly not having a center that after Mikko Koivu, Mikael Granlund, who we'll talk about I guess in a little bit, is your second best option at center, and you have all these playmaking wings. And if you want to make these playmaking wings score goals, well, you need a guy in the center of the ice, and the Wild don't have a center. I don't think it's on Mike Yeo. I think the biggest thing that the Wild that are kicking themselves for is not addressing or trying to obtain a center to help ignite the offense and ignite the power play.
Well, I think Chuck Fletcher has tried to acquire the center that we need. It was well known that he was involved in the Columbus trade talks with Ryan Johansson, which, who wouldn't love Ryan? Ryan Johansson is a younger Mikko Koivu who can, skate faster. Mikko Koivu might be the slowest guy in North America right now, as much as I love him. But I think that we keep on coming back to this. Who do we make the trade for? Well, who do you get rid of?
Right.
You don't. I have not given up on Matt Dumba yet. You see him struggle still, but I think people forget, Jared Spurgeon didn't just come into the league as an 18-year-old or as a 20-year-old rather and just, break through. He was drafted in the 7th round by the Islanders. He didn't pan out there. He was signed as a free agent by the Wild and, given a professional tryout in training camp, and he signed on with the team after that. So it takes a little while to adjust, especially a guy like Matt Dumba, who's a little undersized and, was fortunate enough in juniors to kind of just muscle people through because the size and the speed disparity between the NHL and the CHL is vast. I don't think you give up on him. I don't think you trade him. Jonas Brodin is kind of that chip I think you could dangle, but I think that's kind of why we lost out on the Johansson trade. But I mean, granted, he's not Seth Jones. Seth Jones is obviously, you look at the advanced metrics for his short time in Columbus. He's looking like he's the real deal that everyone kind of thought he was. He was kind of in a logjam in Nashville behind a bunch of defensemen. But Jonas Brodin is not that guy. That's probably why we couldn't get Johansson. So I don't know who you dangle out there. I feel Dumba might be the answer to a lot of Wild's problems, to be honest with you. I'm surprised that they haven't just given him the keys to the power play with all the struggles.
Yeah, you brought up that a few weeks ago. You're kind of confused that Matt Dumba isn't really getting a crack at this power play, and you brought up a good point that obviously he's an offensive defenseman, and we've seen him in limited power play minutes perform at a high level.
Very limited, not to cut you off, but very limited. He's only 9th on the team in power play ice time per game, and that's behind 3 other defensemen.
Right, and that's the other thing is the Wild have this insane amount of defensemen that can kind of play the power play. And Dumba, you made the argument that he should be handed the keys to the power play, and that his game is suited towards that. And I don't really understand. You don't really understand why he's not there. And I think obviously the logical Mike Yeo answer is, well, he hasn't earned it. I mean, I know he specializes in 5-on-4 with a man advantage, but he hasn't really performed offensively that much all season.
No, you're absolutely right.
And the safest assumption is that he has not earned the right to be on the power play.
Right, but you got to think who has earned it this year. I mean, this power play is god awful. I mean, this power play is on track to be out of the Minnesota Wild's 15 seasons now. It's going
to be close to the Jacques Lemaire one where he dubbed it as skim milk, where he said it was 1%, 2%.
Yeah, 1. Yeah, that's a classic Lemaire line. Yeah, but people forget the Wild's best power play percentage ever was actually in a Lemaire era. So I'm not saying that Matt Dumba, you slot Matt Dumba in on the left hash wall taking one-timer bombs, and that's also going to vault the Wild into this 28% power play percentage. But people say, well, he hasn't earned it. I agree. He's a defensive liability, without question. There's a reason he's playing limited minutes, sometime even on a bottom six role. But no one's really earned it. I mean, Zach Parise is our best power play performer so far, and he's not performing very well either. And part of that makes me wonder how much of the system. You kind of go back to the coaching staff. Daryl Sador's not with the team, and he was running the power play last year, and it wasn't great. But I wonder how much he's missed.
Yeah, and the power play too. I think the frustrating part is it was performing right around league average in the first 30 games. I mean, it was at heck, for the first 10 games, it was the Wild were crippled to it. They needed the power play.
They needed it. Oh God, yes, absolutely.
First 10 games of the season, and then in the last 15 games, couple power play goals now in the last 2 games. Luckily, your last 2 games respectively.
Back to back, baby. We're on a roll.
But 3 since the new year started. And the point is, if you were to bring Dumba on it's that why not? Because clearly 1 for 35 hasn't worked. Why not try a Matt Dumba out there? And a lot of people have. I was talking to some buddies, and Jason Zucker is a guy that doesn't really get time in the power play. No, Jason Zucker is a very fast guy, and I think. He's obviously someone that's very good behind the net. We've seen that countless times again with his wraparound shots and whatnot, but he's maybe a guy that you consider throwing in the power play, I think. I mean, clearly, just overall his game from when he came in the league out of college a few years ago was a rough time, but then the time he has spent and worked on his game has obviously worked. It's not even close to the player he was when he came in the league. I think why not try to maybe even spark someone else, put someone else on the power play that really hasn't seen it before.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously I could see that, and I feel like they're open to anything, but I also feel they're worried. Like, if it's halfway through the season now, and you shouldn't be tinkering halfway through the season. You know what I mean? I wonder
Yeah.
how much the coaching staff and some of the players with a larger presence in the locker room. Miko Koivu, Zach Parise, Ryan Suter, even Jason Pominville, despite his lack of production this year, are kind of worried about, do you really want to try to figure this out now? Shouldn't we be trying to tinker with things and massively overhauling? I agree. I'm not against at all a Jason Zucker spot on the power play, but I also think that he tends to create his offense through his speed. And in the power play, you kind of want to set it up and cycling. You want to get that puck moving around the ozone, and that's kind of not his game. He's the kind of guy who's very north-south. He wants to take the puck at our red line and just skate it in as fast as he can and beat guys, which he can with his speed. But once you get in the zone, I think his creativity is kind of limited. He's kind of a shoot-first guy, which maybe they need, but I think that's why he probably hasn't gotten that time. But yeah, I'm baffled just as anyone is as to the lack of production, and also the fact that I don't think anyone has an answer to it or why it's happening.
I think that one of the funniest things about Minnesota hockey fans is they want two things. Obviously, they want a Stanley Cup. That's number one. And then number two is they want a successful power play. And sometimes it seems the latter is more important than the first. And it's kind of hilarious. It's awful, too, if you ever go to a Wild game. And it's sometimes hard to go to the X, and even though it's a beautiful arena, because you just hear all the idiots yell shoot every 2 seconds. And it's frustrating when, as a fan sometimes, when you're going there and it's like, that's just not going to, we're not just going to shoot at will. It's a tough time to watch it. And I think Minnesota sports fans do kind of sometimes have to just relax on this power play idea that it's just automatically going to fix our team.
Yeah. I mean, you look at special teams are always important. From if you play the sport a little bit, how important that time is. You have to take advantage of having that extra man. I think a lot of the fans, in Minnesota, or a lot of the fans anywhere really, are just kind of halfway knowledgeable about the sport. But Minnesota Wild is a sexy team to watch in Minnesota. I mean, you can't. The Twins kind of made some surprising noise this year, but didn't make the playoffs. The Wolves, I'm pretty sure, are about to move to Vancouver any day now. I don't know what they're doing. The Vikings, were successful, but it's not like they're lighting anyone up. Terry Bridgewater, throws for 100 passing yards per game. So I think that they want, if they're going to divulge their attention into this team, they want them to not just, succeed. They want them to, overachieve. This NHL 16 power play percentage of like 45%, just isn't going to happen with this squad.
Right.
That's not who we are. We have a solid team. This is a team that was granted galvanized by a Devin Dubnyk acquisition last year, but went on a torrid run where we were the best team in hockey for 4 months.
Yeah, like 4 regulation losses in the last 30 games or something.
And none of them back to back. A lot of people thought that when we played the Blues in the first round that we were going to kind of get knocked around just because of the physicality that St. Louis tends to bring, and we made St. Louis look like the remnants of Harding High School's junior varsity team when I was there. I mean, they were just sorry to see, and I think people expected us to take this big leap, and I'm guilty of that as well. But I just think, the Parises, the Koivus, the Pominvilles, the Vaneks, they're showing their age a little bit. And these Ninos, Granlunds, even Zuckers, aren't taking that step that everyone thought they were going to. They're so young. I understand that. But I think I thought I pegged Zucker for 25 goals this year. He'll be lucky to get 15, I think. Same goes for Nino. it's Charlie Coyle is turning out to be.
He's been the best.
I think he's been the best Wild player this past month.
He's been consistent as heck, and finally has
whose name isn't Devin Dubnyk or Ryan Suter.
Right, yeah. And he's someone that has played a lot of games now over the last few years. I mean, he's a young guy, but he's played nearly 2 full seasons in the NHL, and he's finally taken that leap. And it looks like he'll stick at wing. I know they've been drifting with him in center. They want his size to play a factor. I don't think you fix what's you don't fix what's broken. And with him playing that wing, him and Mikko Koivu right now they're sizzling on off each other like crazy. They both of them are just feeling each other on the ice. It's been really fun to watch that line, and it's probably gonna be something, if the Wild can't score, it's something that will look to crutch for.
Yeah, I think you're right. Which is dangerous. You don't want to get into that one-dimensional line, where your opposing team can send their best checking line out on your best scoring line, and then that's kind of it, and then you're shut down for offense, and you're kind of forced into making a break with that. But yeah, Charlie Coyle and Mikko Koivu, I mean, that's a great. I like that tandem. They're both big-bodied. They play so well in the corners. I mean, people, if you are an anti-Mikko Koivu fan, just watch him play in the corners. Like, yeah, he's not gonna, roof one and knock the water bottle off the goalie's net, but just watch his play in the corners. It's almost embarrassing for the other team. Like, they don't touch the puck. They're shoved around by this guy while he's got his back end turned towards them. And Charlie Coyle is kind of he's a younger version of that, and he's playing with a lot of confidence too, which I think a lot of the team isn't right now.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that's important. I mean,
that's by far just the most, I think, impressive thing with Charlie Coyle is he just looks like he is so comfortable out there finally. And
he just dangles. He just dances around in the offensive zone. I think in the game in LA, I saw him receive a pass, just outside of the Los Angeles Kings own zone, and he skated in their zone, and he went all the way around the net, and then came back and circled all the way to the point where he entered the zone and before he made a pass again. A lot of that was because the Wild, surprise, surprise, wasn't in position to make a play. But he was able to protect the puck, and I think he made 2 moves around Drew Doughty too, which, I mean, he's no slouch,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest thing with Coyle and I think that's what was cool about it, was seeing him kind of use this great stick work, because we know he's a big cat. They want him to be this physical guy in a face-off dot, maybe tried him at center, and now you still throw a big body like that in the corners, he's going to win. But now he's actually kind of showing off his stick work, which is impressive when you look at a 6'3", 220-pound guy out there that's kind of having fun right now.
Yeah, he looks like he's playing pond hockey, and I mean, you kind of you see him, and you're like, okay, I mean, this is what Chuck Fletcher obviously envisioned. This is what they saw when he was part of that Brett Burns trade. They brought over Devin Setoguchi. They got the draft pick, which I think they used on Zach Phillips, who is in the Boston system now. But Charlie Coyle was a big part of that trade. They were kind of watching him. I think he went to, I think it was BU or Boston College. I can't remember which one. I'm sure anyone who from that area who listens to me say that will probably
all of our listeners in Boston
smash their laptop. Yeah. I apologize. But he's taken that step now, where, just like you were saying, he's young. He's got a few seasons under his belt. He's got a couple good playoff runs under his belt too, which that's a big reason why we brought in Jarrett Stoll. Just his playoff experience. So that's important. Now, if only we can get the Zuckers and the Ninos and the Dumbas, to just take that, or Granlund, for goodness sake, to take that one step forward. The Granlund experiment, as far as I'm concerned, just needs to be over.
Yes, it looks like it's getting near there, and it's not a point problem with Granlund. It's not my opinion that he's not producing at an offensive level that I would like to see more. Its IQ is just, it seems like it's not there.
He's suited for a European game. You're absolutely right.
He just looks, sometimes he makes just the most boneheaded decisions with the puck. And I know a lot of people loved, to rip on a Thomas Vanek, who is sluggish and as appealing to the eye, that's right there. He doesn't skate too hard. He's not going to go on and check someone in the corner. But there's sometimes with Granlund where he'll enter the zone and there's 3 guys in front of him, or he'll just a tape-to-tape pass in the offensive zone to the other team. And it's so frustrating to watch because we just heard what great, of all the prospects, I think, that the Wild have, prospects as in the Granlunds, the Zuckers, the Coyles, all these guys that have come up over the last 2 or 3 years. I think Granlund had one of the highest of the ceilings, and clearly he just has not delivered in that promise.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Granny was, he was hailed not just by the Minnesota Wild brass, but the NHL as a whole. After the Wild drafted him, and he was still playing in Europe. The NHL as a whole viewed him as the best player not in the NHL, the best prospect rather, not in the NHL. And he took the few years to come over, which those European players tend to do. Their game needs a little while to develop. The ice is bigger, the game isn't. You're not as relied on as a two-way player as much over in Europe as you are over here. Mikko Koivu took 2 or 3 years to come over. I think it was 3, to be honest. But yeah, he came over, and I think he's just kind of lost. When Zach Parise has been on your wing for 18 months now, and you look like you're going to struggle to score at a 40 point per season pace, I wonder if you just kind of cut your losses. You don't give away centers. I'm not saying give them away,
especially on this team that literally is just dying for
right
offensive center.
And I'm not saying just give them away, but there's got to be, I'm racking my brain here trying to think of a guy who's just kind of lost on another team, a center, a young center.
Well,
who probably
someone
needs another chance.
it was featured with a little bit from Chad Graff too, but someone before he broke his leg, and it would probably cost more than an arm and a leg, but Ryan Nugent Hopkins in Edmonton.
Yeah, Ryan Nugent Hopkins is an extremely offensively. And
his name was being buzzed around over the trade deadline, and he, like I said, he probably would cost even more, I would think than Johansson from Columbus. He would probably honestly cost more, but the upside and the readiness that is right now. He's only 23. The kid's been in the league for 5-6 years already. He's already here and there, and he's in the middle of a contract. If the Wild could figure that one out, that would have been just an amazing move for the Wild.
Yeah, I think cap space would have been an issue there. But you free some up. You don't worry. I gotta think Granlund's going to demand a pay raise. After this bridge contract is over.
I think it's a 2-year thing too. I think
it's a 2-year. Yeah, he's taken that bridge contract. To kind of see. Hey, are you worth it, or can you prove us wrong? Yeah. Nugent Hopkins is, let me rephrase this. Mikael Granlund is the poor man's version of Ryan Nugent Hopkins. Ryan Nugent Hopkins has shown he can produce on what has been a terrible Edmonton team for years. Mm-hmm. And now they have the center depth. McDavid's coming back. Taylor Hall's there. Draisaitl is obviously he's shown that he can play now. So he was available. You're right, and I wouldn't have minded having him at all. But you circle back. What's the cost?
That would be a haul. And you mentioned a team like Edmonton that is clearly able to score goals. I don't think that's ever been an issue with them, but clearly they've never had very good defense. Just ask Devin Dubnyk. They've never had talented blue liners in front of them. Front of their goalies. If the Wild now have a plethora of defense, and what would that cost? That's the biggest thing. Yeah, we'd say we'd love to have him, and I think he'd be an amazing fit for the team. But I'm not saying it was a dynamite chance of happening. It would cost 2 of a Jonas Brodin and a Marco Scandell. They would I would imagine be asking for a haul. And then if you're the Wild, like you said, you're on a salary issue too. It's not even the fact, do we have the prospects and players or draft picks to get into this. It's now of, well, can we afford these guys? We're kind of strapped to a lot of different players.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. And the Koivu contract is as big of a fan of Koivu as I am. That doesn't help us. The Pominville contract is not looking like it's going to pan out. Granted, I don't think it was a poor decision at the time. He was coming off a 30-goal season for us. He had produced fairly well. He was clicking in the locker room. But yeah, I don't know who you move. And I'm standing by my statement. I don't think we have to move someone. I think the Wild just have this, it's this weird yearly identity crisis where they just forget how to play their game. Before this drought, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think we came off, we beat Vancouver 6-0 or something, 5-0, and in the game before that, we had beaten, was it Nashville 4-0? We were on this, 10 goals in 2 games isn't a bad clip, and all of a sudden we just hit this, this slump.
Yeah, it's been just an absolute kind of just nuts slump because you think about it. The Wild were on New Year's Eve. We're 20-10, and they now sit at 23-17, and they've also lost to 2 additional overtime games in that as well. I mean, so just 3 wins over your last 12, 13 games. I mean, it's been pretty tough to watch, and you have to think like, okay, they've gone through this for 3 years in a row now. They've always seemed to break out of it around this time. Of all the years it has happened at, as for lack of better words, the best time, because the Wild do still sit in the playoffs if they were to start today, even though there's a handful of teams breathing down their necks. I mean, last year, they were in 12th place at the break, 8 points or so out. 8 points or so out of the closest playoff spot.
7th place in the division. And I think we finished 5 or maybe even 6 or 7 points up on Calgary, for the wild card spot there.
So the short term answer, and I think at the end of the day I agree with you, is that it's internal. There's no need to furthermore trade away your draft picks or potentially trade away a cornerstone player for a year that if the playoffs still started tomorrow, the Wild would be there. So I don't think you necessarily have to throw. I would love a Ryan. Back to the point, I would love a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but I'm aware of the cost that would take long term for the Wild. Because even in general, I know 3rd round picks aren't necessarily are never a guarantee to be an NHL ready player or NHL player that's going to compete every single year. That's why there's a draft. But you can't keep getting in this trade like if you're Chuck Fletcher and trading around these mid round picks. Because eventually, and it's a proven fact, developmentally, it's going to add up, and you can't just keep trading away draft picks.
Yeah. Oh no, you can't. I think he knows that. I think that's why. I think Michael Russo said that he ran into Fletcher the other day, and he had his phone glued to his ear, and he was on his BlackBerry with his other hand. I think he's desperately trying to work something, but I think he knows that you can't just strip the cupboard down, especially the baby Wild right now are brutally bad. I mean, terrible.
The Iowa Wild are painfully bad.
I think people think, well, who cares? That doesn't matter. Well, it matters a lot if, your young prospects' development is being hindered, their confidence is being hindered by a lack of production. A big reason why Mike Yeo was brought up is because he did so well with our young players in Houston before they moved to Iowa. So I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure that you trade. Would I have been okay with a Jonas Brodin for Ryan Johansson deal? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I don't think anyone would be arms up in the air, ill about that. But
back and on to Brodin, he's someone that I was listening to the radio the other day too, and they were saying that what you're seeing from Jonas Brodin and what you've seen from Jonas Brodin is what you're going to get, and
absolutely.
And there's not
absolutely.
If you think there's a hidden jewel or even a more upside to his game, there isn't. This is what he is, and he's a very they call him the gentleman's defenseman. He's a very polished defenseman.
Very good.
And his value is, yes, it is never going to be higher than it is right now. Clearly, it won't ever be higher because he's already, I think, hit his ceiling, and he's going to be a good defenseman for a long time. He'll be in this league for a good amount of years.
A very long time. Absolutely.
But yes, if that were the case for just a 1-1 swap, I think you'd take that in a second if you were the Wild.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I think people, they're kind of wondering, why isn't Brodin? Why isn't he scoring more? Well, Minnesota Wild fans championed Nick Schultz for years, who I think, he had a couple of years where he didn't have more than 2 or 3 points.
And is our still all-time games leader?
Oh yeah, he is. Congratulations to Nick Schultz, who just hit 1,000 games with Philadelphia the other day. I think this past week. That's the kind of player he is. I will say this: I've seen him make a couple moves. He chose to pass on a wide open net against Anaheim the other day, where I almost, threw my phone through my TV when that happened. But he makes frustrating things. But yeah, I think people forget he's a kid who came over at 19. He's 22. There's all these young guys who are just kind of on the cusp, and they kind of say that, you don't enter your NHL prime until you're about 26, 25, 26. Well, if that's the case, these guys aren't even in their prime yet. Maybe, do you wait? How long do you wait? I don't know. Charlie Coyle's obviously panning out, but yeah, Nino Niederreiter, I thought he was going to take a big jump, and he hasn't. He's been given a lot of opportunities to do so as well. That's kind of what's frustrating. I feel like Jason Zucker kind of gets a pass because you made a good point earlier. He hasn't had any power play time. But Nino kind of gets that time. Nino's been given those top 6 minutes consistently. Not that Zucker's gets a pass from all the problems that he's had, but he doesn't deserve all the flack that he's getting compared to Nino, who I feel like at times you watch Nino skate into the zone and he makes that sidestep move, or he windmills around someone. And you're like, well, that's why this guy was a 5th overall pick. And then all of a sudden, he gets beat out, in the corners with somebody that's the size of Jared Spurgeon. So it's confusing why this lack of development is taking place, and why, these young guys haven't taken the step that they were expected to take. And you wonder, is that, is the coaching staff to blame? Because Mike Yeo is known to be, he's very hard on Jason Zucker. He's obviously hard on Dumba. He's said that he hasn't earned the power play time. I wonder what that
to name Eric Hall. I mean,
oh God, Eric Hall. He's got his name carved into the inside of Mike Yeo's doghouse. Eric Hall is a guy who I think gets a bad rap too. He's a guy, just like you were saying about Jonas Brodin. Jonas Brodin's a gentleman's defenseman. You're absolutely right. Eric Hall is kind of, I'm comparing different eras here and totally different players, but not necessarily different styles of play. He's kind of like, a softer Wes Walz. Eric Halla has that ability to create a little bit of offense, but really he's a great two-way player. He's a steady player. He's young. He's making some mistakes. He's not as young as the other guys. He did the 4 years of college, but he is he's steady. I see him make some mistakes sometimes, but I feel like he gets a big brunt of the blame because he doesn't score. Well, he plays 4th line minutes, and he's not expected to do that. He's expected to forecheck well and keep the puck in the other team's zone. And if he gets a couple shots per game, great. But Eric Halla is a player too who I'm not too upset with how Eric Halla is playing. I'll just leave it at that before I go on a rant about players that Mike Yeo needs to back off on.
Yeah, no, we'll save that topic maybe for the next show. But maybe to finish out the Wild topics, we kind of were talking about Darcy Kemper, and Kemper has given the Wild a much needed backup start behind Devan Dubnyk, who, well, we saw last year he ran out for 39 games, and although, yeah, you kind of had to, but you clearly felt it in the playoffs at the same time. And the value now of having a backup goaltender, no one is questioning whether Darcy Kemper, I think, should be starting more than Devan Dubnyk, and rightfully so. But for the first time, the Wild have a capable backup goaltender, and I think the initial reaction is, oh my gosh, we got value there. We should see what we can get for it. Where right now the Wild, and you look past it, the last few years where they just had no goaltending. This time last year before Dubnyk, and I think you hang on to Kemper. I don't think you make any rush to make him a deal at the deadline, the offseason, or this time next year. I think you clearly hang on to him because it's valuable to have a guy that could maybe spell 20, 25 games from Devin Dubnyk and most importantly, get you a win.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Darcy Kuemper, he's always had those flashes of, he's a big frame goalie. I think he's about 6'5". He fills up a lot of the net. It was always kind of his head. He was his own worst enemy, the game against the game against LA, he plays so well. I mean, granted, the Wild kind of woke up and played their style of play for the first time in weeks, but Darcy Kuemper saved that game. There was a lot of great saves made by Darcy Kuemper when his defense kind of left him hanging. But you're absolutely right. This team was so starved for goaltending depth. We grabbed this guy who, by the name of Ilya Bryzgalov to try to save our season 2 years ago. And, that didn't turn out great. I mean, he kind of helped. He spotted a couple of games in that series against Colorado that we won 7 games with. But goaltending depth is so critical. You can't give that away. Darcy kind of shot himself in the foot. I will say this, that game-winning goal by San Jose, with 90 seconds left, Joe Pavelski just kind of threw that puck at the net. I think you even if you look at the replay, you see Joe Pavelski's kind of like shocked that it went in. I think he's just trying to create a chance, and that's what hurts Darcy Kuemper. You see him make these crazy athletic saves, and then all of a sudden, Joe Blow flutters one in from the blue line, and it goes 5-hole on him. So Darcy Kuemper, very, very talented. I just wish he'd, pull himself together. And he's another guy who's on a bridge contract too. I wonder if he's going to price himself out of Minnesota soon, which I hope not, because goaltending depth is key. Devin Dubnyk, even during this bad stretch, I think he's only given up eight goals in his past 4 games, even though he's lost all 4 of them. Those are pretty good numbers, and you can't just ride him for the next 30 some odd games. You need Darcy to come in and play a game like he did against LA, without question, if this team's going to have a chance at all.
Yeah, and you brought up organizationally, how we had to reach for Ilya Bryzgalovs and even take Devin Dubnyk was not a sure thing by any means when they
God no.
And I think the hardest part about it was, he was the goalie on some really bad Edmonton teams, and his stats actually looked not that bad considering the guys in front of him.
I think with Edmonton he had like a 915. His career with Edmonton is like a 915 save percentage, which
translates to like 940.
940,
for Carey Price. It's ridiculous. When you saw that, it was like, he showed he's been there, and then towards the end of his career, he clearly got burned out and clearly maybe even was trying to do a little too much because he physically had to. He turns his season around in Phoenix, puts up decent numbers, not necessarily mind-blowing numbers.
Once again, for a very bad Phoenix team.
and then he just took it and ran with it. And the Wild had no one in Iowa, in the wings. I can't recall right now off the top of my head who would legitimately be the next goaltender to step up if Devin Dubnyk for some reason had to retire tomorrow and Darcy Kuemper was in a fantasy world. I don't think there's anyone that's even close to maybe even being an AHL capable goalie, let alone an NHL goalie, because of how bad the Iowa Wild are. They had to make a move for Dubnyk, and they have to, most importantly, hold on to Darcy Kuemper.
Yeah, you're right. And kind of to wrap up my argument on Kuemper, I feel like he's clearly talented. He's got his own problems. He imploded against Dallas this year with a 3-goal lead. We didn't play very well in front of him, but a lot of those saves should have been made. But yeah, he didn't sign his contract until very late in the offseason. I kind of worry. It's a double-edged sword. I want him to do really well, but I also don't want him to price himself out of his role. I have a feeling that he's not an NHL starter. I think you brought up a very good point. I think he's a guy who spells 25 games for year number 1. But I don't think Darcy Kuemper knows that though.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. It's okay. You can say that, but try telling it to a kid that's still like 23, 24. I mean, it's like, oh, I can be the best backup, or I could actually try and make more money and use my contract and actually get something with it instead of accepting this role of, well, I guess I'm a decent.
You're the best of the lousiest and the lousiest of the best.
Exactly. So I understand it. Yeah, I hope you would think that he wouldn't do that. You'd hope that he wouldn't try to max himself out, and most importantly, you'd hope the Wild don't have to, like I said, rely on. I was shocked. I was honestly surprised. I know they got the win with Kemper for the first time in 6 games, but I was surprised to see him start again on the back-to-back. I thought, all right, that's Doobie's net again. And then they went back-to-back with Kemper.
You shut out a team like LA. I mean, if I'm the coach of the Minnesota Wild, I'd give him that start. I would. I can see that role. Sure. Just to play devil's advocate.
Exactly. So I guess, and you could see it that way, that clearly we've played very well in front of him. He still only lost 2 regulation games, I believe, all season. He's played maybe 10 starts now. But yeah, hopefully you would think that he doesn't max himself out. Any closing Minnesota Wild remarks? Anything we didn't get
to? No, we need to win tonight. It's going into the All-Star break, against an Arizona team that's not too great. They're in 3rd place in the Pacific Division,
wide open,
which is wide open. Yeah, because of people call it parity. I call it just terrible. That Pacific Division is just brutal.
Yeah, the Kings are winning that division.
With the exception of LA and the run that San Jose has been on, that division is awful. But yeah, we need a win tonight. It's at home. You haven't won at home in a while. You kind of just need to get feeling good, into the All-Star break. Let guys go home, decompress, and let Devin Dubnyk go to Nashville and get 6 goals stored on him on this awful excuse for an All-Star game, and then come back and get it together. Yeah, you need a win tonight. Go Wild.
Go Wild indeed. And I'm going to make one little last pitch here to you. One more final question before we say goodbye. Is there a team that's not the Wild that you're and it can't, don't give me Washington. Don't give me Is there a sleeper team that you're kind of rooting for this year? Not to make maybe a Stanley Cup run that you wouldn't think that they would by their record.
Okay, I'll say this. I'm going to say one thing. This isn't a Stanley Cup team. So before we sign off here, this isn't a team that's going to win the Stanley Cup. But the Carolina Hurricanes,
of course, the homer goes for Carolina Hurricane.
I live in North Carolina. I've lived here for about 5.5 years. I met my wife here. It's a beautiful place to be. So it's a nice place. Yes, I try to root for the Canes. And they've been bad. They've been really bad the past couple of years. But this year, their numbers were hiding, something of what they really were. Their record wasn't reflecting what they're truly capable of. And now recently they're playing very, very well. They're finally getting the goaltending. They signed Eddie Lack this year. And he was terrible until I think the new year came. And I think he just made a New Year's resolution where he just wasn't going to let the puck in the net. So that's been working out for him. But they will not win the Stanley Cup, but they're a team to watch in what I think is a very, very soft Eastern Conference to make the playoffs. Now, Stanley Cup wise, I think it's coming from the West again. The parity is pretty obvious. I'm not rooting for them. Chicago looks every bit as oiled up for a deep run.
God. Yeah,
I get sick of it, and I don't want it to happen because they've been just the bane of the Wild's existence. But you watch them play, and you watch that organization and the way they brought up a lot of those players and the smart moves. The Artemi Panarin is turning out to be every bit of what they thought he would be. Granted, I could play on a line with Patrick Kane and put in 20 goals a year.
You might be able to.
Yeah. But Chicago, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I bet you Chicago is probably your team to watch.
Yeah, no, I feel you. They are scary good, and they shedded weight this year, and it was like, okay, they're going to take a little step back. No, they're even full throttled, and they're even more engaged, and even if they are the 1 seed or they aren't the 1 seed, they've played the Joel Quenneville game of if we're good enough It's what Minnesota sports. All right, we just need to be good enough to get in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens. With Chicago, it's literally that is the case. We just need to squeeze in because once we get in, we're fine. We don't care if we're first, fifth, or seventh. It doesn't matter to them.
It's the LeBron James model for the NHL. Absolutely.
Yeah, it just get in, and we're gonna get there. My surprise team, and this is you're probably gonna laugh at me, but I have loved it. I was on board with this move in the offseason, and yes, they're still on the outside looking in. I'm a big fan of the Philadelphia Flyers and Dave Hakstol. If they're, I know Dave Hakstol is one of the scariest looking individuals, and arguably, and seriously, one of the most hated individuals.
He's not the Minnesota hockey. Yeah, he is hated. He's also not the guy you want to go pick his daughter up for a date. Yeah, he's got that.
Oh God, yeah, he's the guy. And I guess all right, we're not gonna stroke freaking Dave Hakstol anymore. But he's a guy that as a Minnesota hockey fan, you're like, wait, you're a Minnesota hockey fan and you're a big fan of Dave Hakstol. It is kind of an oxymoron. But I'm liking what I'm seeing. I mean, Philadelphia, they've had a nice little stretch in December. Finally, they were awful to start the year. I mean, flat out awful. And now they've played a little better. I know they're not scoring goals at a rate that kind of is surprising with guys like Claude Giroux on it and Jacob Voracek, but they've got a nice movement going. They're still on the outside looking in for a playoff run, but I think Dave Hakstol is going to last there. That was a place that was skeptical of him going. Everyone said, oh, that's a tough place to go. But in my opinion, you break down Flyers fans who are crazy and who are nuts about their hockey team. University of North Dakota, I know I love to pick on them because, I mean, University of North Dakota, but their hockey fans are eerily similar to a town like Philadelphia that cares a lot about their hockey. I just hope they hang on to him. I think it looks like they will. There's no really indication that they're going to let go of him early. I think he has these Flyers on the right track, but it's going to take a couple years to really build them up back to the powerhouse that they obviously originally, when they first came to the league, were always destined to be.
Yeah, it's a smart observation. I don't necessarily agree with it, but you're entitled to your opinion.
Yeah, you're entitled to a wrong opinion.
You're entitled to be wrong. It's fine.
Yeah.
I love you. You don't have to be right all the time. You're wrong. It's okay.
Yeah. It's all right. So I'm going with Dave Hakstol, and
right.
He looks into your soul I've talked to him before. I've interviewed him before. He's my favorite person I've ever interviewed in my short time as a professional. I don't.
This Dave Hakstol love affair has to stop. I need you to sign off now.
I'm all right. Yeah, there's been enough of Dave Hakstol.
Yeah, there's been enough of Dave Hakstol. I'm kind of getting sick of this.
All right, so this was the episode 1, Brothers Lost in the Wild podcast. I don't know. Is it safe? Can I name it that? Are you on board with that?
You can name it whatever you please, little brother. Whatever you please. Whatever your heart desires, as long as I have final sign-off.
Okay, you can have final sign-off. This has been episode 1. Stay tuned. We'll have more in the future, maybe on this Google Hangouts, maybe in a different way. But yeah, thanks for listening, Liam. You get the last word.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you were entertained by the banter. We kind of tend to ramble a little bit, which I'm probably doing now. But stay tuned. More will come to follow.